Hi everyone, welcome to another Super Deluxe Edition unboxing video. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. We're not unboxing a new release, so to speak, but I thought we'd do a quick kind of preview or recap around George Michael's album Older, because we're all expecting a reissue to be announced in the imminent future. There's obviously been a bit of a leak, as some of you may be aware. So some of the details and the track listings have surfaced online. So it seems a good time to remember the album, how good the original album was, but also look back at the singles that came out and the formats and some special editions that have surfaced over the years. Of course, this album came out in 1996, so it was George's third solo album. Most people remember the gap between the second album, Listen Without Prejudice, which was 1990, and his third album, Older, which was 96. It's quite a long gap, and it tends to be regarded as the sort of wilderness he is, if you like, because George's profile was fairly kind of low at the time. Having said that, it wasn't as bad as you might think. I mean, he was still the first or the second album, Listen Without Prejudice. It was a very successful record. I think it sold something like 1.4 million copies in the UK. So it actually sold more copies than Faith. But in terms of the singles and the sort of high-profile nature of the singles, that wasn't so much the case. Praying for Time got to number 6, but none of the other singles got in the top 20 even, including Freedom 90, which stalled at 28. So it's quite surprising when you look back on it. So it felt a bit like maybe, George was washed up in terms of hit singles. But of course he wasn't, and in this intervening period, he had two number ones, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me with Elton John, and Somebody to Love from the Freddie Mercury concert. And Too Funky got to number 4, so he was having some big hits. He was by no means a spent force. Nevertheless, there was a lot of anticipation with this record, and there were 6 singles released from Older. It was an enormous campaign. The first single was Jesus to a Child, and that came out in January of 1996. The campaign didn't really end until December 97, so it was nearly 2 years. It's an incredible long period of time for one album. When you think how quickly albums come and go these days, that's remarkable actually. So Jesus to a Child was the first single, and I should say this was the era of the CD. So Older itself, most of the copies were sold on CD. Most of the singles didn't come out on vinyl. In fact, there was only 2 out of the 6 singles there was any vinyl format at all, and that was Spinning the Wheel and Star People 97, which both had 12-inch singles in the UK. The first 2 singles had one CD single, and then the remaining singles tended to be doubles. Of course, the 2 CD single thing was very much marketing to try and sort of optimise the chart position of whatever the single was. So Jesus to a Child, first single, January 1996. This got to number 1 in the UK. It's a major success for George. He must have been delighted at that. Not really an obvious single, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, it's quite a slow... it's a beautiful song, but it's kind of slow and mellow. But nevertheless, there was enough demand. He hadn't really had a hit for, 3 years or whatever it was. So this was a big success. And this single was very much kind of in keeping with future singles. So they tend to be 3 or 4 track CD singles. This one had the full-length version of Jesus to a Child, which was nearly 7 minutes. But I'm pretty sure there was a radio edit created, but it wasn't commercially released. A couple of live versions and the instrumental of Older as well, which is interesting because, of course, the album hadn't come out at this point. So it was a way of hearing a little sneak preview of something from the album, albeit it's an instrumental. So these CDs, they tended to be digipacks. This was the kind of era of the digipack CD single. Lyric there. And as I say, there wasn't a second CD for this with a different selection. It was just, that was it. So in May 96, we had the second single, Fast Love. Now this was another number 1. I do actually own all these singles, but I can't really find them because I don't know about you, I don't have enough room for all my CD singles on the shelf, so they tend to sort of stay in boxes in the loft. I must have picked this up from a charity shop at some point, but I did buy it originally. But anyway, this is Fast Love. This is another number one single. Obviously a massive, massive hit this was. This was the last single to be released before the album came out. It's notable for having an extended version and a re-recording of I'm Your Man, if you can see that there. It's pretty hard to read, but the second track is I'm Your Man 96. It doesn't actually say 96, but that's how it tends to get known, which was a re-recording of the song with George singing. It was actually fairly much based on the Lisa Moorish version, which came out in 95, which George featured on. It's very, very similar, except that George takes the lead vocals on this version instead of Lisa Moorish. The same version ended up on the Best of Wham, which came out at the end of 1997. That was credited to Wham. This is credited to George Michael, and the other one was credited to Lisa Moorish. So, kind of slightly strange situation, almost identical versions attributed to different artists. But anyway, so that was Fast Love. So that, as I say, that was the last single to come out before the record itself, Older. So Older came out later on in May. That's just a few weeks after Fast Love. I mean, this CD was very familiar. It sold 1.8 million copies, Older, in the end. There's so many singles, so much promotion. I mean, George didn't tour this album. That's one important point to mention. There was the Unplugged concert, which bizarrely ended up on the Listen Without Prejudice deluxe edition, which doesn't seem to make much sense, but that's what happened. So this got to number one. All George Michael's studio albums where he's written new original material got to number one. The only one that didn't was the covers album, Songs from the Last Century, which got to number two. So Spinning the Wheel was the next single. So this came out in August 96. As I said, this is the first single to come out after the album had come out. And maybe with a nod to that, they actually put some new material on this single. It's very unusual for George Michael. He's famously unprolific. So the Wham singles, the Faith singles, they didn't really have, apart from the odd remix, there was never any new songs. Well, I say never. There was the odd exception to that, Blue being one, which was the B-side to Club Tropicana. But in general, it tended to be instrumentals as the B-side to singles, which was pretty dull. But yeah, there was two new songs here on this particular CD single. One's called You Know That I Want To, and the other one's called Safe. So two brand new songs, very unusual. And these were joined by the radio edit of Spinning the Wheel and the forthright edit of Spinning the Wheel as well. Very nice 6-panel digipack, quite sort of lavish packaging. Now Spinning the Wheel, the first two singles got to number one. Spinning the Wheel got to number two, and the reason George didn't have 3 number ones in a row from the album was because the Spice Girls were at number one with Wannabe at the time. The Spice Girls were, of course, massive. So first single, Wannabe stayed at number one for 7 weeks. So the Spinning the Wheel came out on the 6th week of Wannabe being number one. So even 6 weeks into the Spice Girls, George couldn't knock them off the top of the charts. Bizarrely, when they did eventually go down the charts and something else replaced the Spice Girls at number one, it was Peter Andre of all people. So there you go. A couple of weeks later, George would have had another number one, but instead Peter Andre got in there. So that's a bit unlucky for George. There were 2 versions of this single, so that's the kind of EP version with the extra tracks, and then there was a kind of dance mix CD, which basically has all the mixes on it there. So you got the sort of full length kind of forthright club mix, which is 8 minutes. There's a John Douglas remix, and this was on 12-inch as well. So this is one of the ones where there was a 12-inch. Actually, you can see it better there, can't you? So, you know, if you're a collector, it's quite nice collecting these CD singles because, you know, they were quite good really with the track selections, especially this one because it had some new songs. Now the next single was Older, which this isn't Older, this is You Have Been Loved, but I have got it somewhere, I can't find it. Older was the 4th single off the album, and I find it incredible that it did so well. It got to number 3 in the charts. It was released in February 1997, so we're into the next year now. It did have another new track, a cover of Bonnie Raitt's I Can't Make You Love Me, so that probably helped it along. But even so, it's a slow, kind of jazzy, sort of not particularly commercial song, I don't think, Older. And it was the fourth single and it got to number 3. And also, when you consider, remember back to Jesus as a Child, this already had Older on it, albeit the instrumental. A few singles later, they're actually releasing Older as a single. So that was pretty interesting. I think Older had a couple of CDs as well with various bonus tracks. The next single after Older, again, which I'm not going to show you because I don't have it to hand, was Star People 97. So this is a sort of rejig of Star People, not my favourite track off the record, but it was another massively successful single. I mean, it went to number 2. So all the singles so far, in fact, they all, I think everyone realises that they all went top 3, the singles, which is phenomenal, really. Another little chart fact for you. The reason that Star People didn't go to number 1 was because Gary Barlow had released his solo single, Love Won't Wait, the same week, and that went to number 1, not Star People. So there you go. So he was thwarted by Gary Barlow, kicking off his solo career. Star People, there was as I said before, there was a 12-inch of it with a load of remixes. Now the final single, this is the 6th single off one album, was You Have Been Loved. So that's what I'm holding in my hands. This is one of the CDs. You can see there it's CD 2. What can we say about this? It got to number 2 in the charts, and it very much captured the public mood at the time because Princess Diana had been killed in the accident at the end of August in Paris. And everyone was it was just unbelievable media saturation. Everyone was talking about it. It was an amazing week to think back on. And this single kept being played, and it became the 6th single. Now, there is something that's known as the Princess Diana mix, which has a radio presenter talking about her death over the top of a bit of it. But anyway, one interesting point about You Have Been Loved is that it was co-written with David Austin, George's old friend from way, 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 way back. Now, David had also co-written Look at Your Hands from the Faith album, so he kind of benefited from the collaboration there. David tends to be known now as George Michael's manager, or the manager of George Michael's estate or whatever. It's never really been made crystal clear what his role is, but he tends to be known as his manager. And I think he's been overseeing the reissue of Older that will get officially announced probably in the near future. Slightly weird, this thing, CD2, because it is You Have Been Loved, but You Have Been Loved gets shoved to the bottom. And it's The Strangest Thing 97 are the 2 kind of first tracks. There's a remix and a radio mix of that. I think the other CD had a different selection of tracks. It might have had some unplugged tracks, for instance. I know that they were dotted around some of the CDs. So, yeah, as a recap, the singles, Jesus as a Child got to number 1, Fast Love got to number 1, Spinning the Wheel got to number 2, Older got to number 3, Star People 97 got to number 2, and You Have Been Loved got to number 2 as well. So, pretty impressive campaign from DreamWorks and the team behind the album. But why stop there? So, You Have Been Loved stayed in the charts for ages. In fact, You Have Been Loved was released on the same day as Elton John's reworking of Candle in the Wind. It had no chance of getting to number 1, but if it had been released a week earlier, it probably would have. So there's another interesting scenario. In December 97, so this is like 19-20 months after the album came out, they released a special edition of Older, a 2-disc special edition. Older and Upper is how it's referred to. And the packaging is quite interesting because it comes in this outer slipcase with obviously a close-up of the eye and the track listing on the back. But the CDs are treated differently. So Older itself is just the normal album version. So the packaging is identical to the normal album version. The only difference is the CDs were gold. So that's the way to tell the difference. I thought, when I looked at this, I thought, it's bronzing badly, but it's not. They were actually gold CDs. Yeah, so that's the standard album. And then the bonus disc, which is called, or known as Upper. Well, it's called Upper actually, yeah. This is a 6-track. Again, it's gold. There you go, Upper. It's a 6-track bonus disc. But he didn't actually give you anything new, because if you'd been collecting the CD singles, and if you're a fan, you probably were. What it was giving you, it's giving you the 2 new songs from the Spinning the Wheel single, which are You Know That I Want To and Safe. So they're those 2 there. And then it's just a collection of radio edits and remixes. There were some interactive elements on the disc as well, which is a nod to the time. So 97, the internet was all kicking in. But yeah, so it was a collection of previously released songs and remixes. That's what Upper was all about. So after 2 years of singles, the special edition just repeated stuff that had already come out, which was pretty disappointing, I guess. The thing is, this new reissue that we've had a bit of a sneak preview of, it's very much looking like Upper is going to form part of that on vinyl and CD. So all these years later, whatever it is, 26 years later, that's pretty disappointing if they're just going to repeat something which was repeating something when it came out in December 97. We'll have to wait and see, let's not prejudge it, but that's what it's looking like. So that's Older and Upper, that's the special edition. And then that's not quite it, because in 2014, so the Japanese Hong Kong special edition came out, which is known as the K2 HD mastered version. So this is actually a different mastering, and the packaging is really interesting because it's got this sort of outer clear slipcase, a bit like the old Universal ones. So that comes out, and the presentation is actually really nice because it's a kind of case-bound book, gold, and there's a bit of blurb there. I mean, the Japanese love to sort of convince you that whether it's super high material SHM discs or other similar things, that they're better quality than normal. But this is quite interesting because there was a Wham one of this as well. Yeah, there was a version of Wham! The Final which came out similar to this, and the mastering was definitely better. But yeah, so the actual booklet's the same kind of pictures and layout as the original, but it's sort of packaged in this book format. And then the disc here, typical Japanese style, the disc's protected, and that's kind of what the disc looks like. There's only 1,000 of these, so it's fairly rare, and they're all numbered as well. So this is number 556. So that's the 11 tracks written on the back there. So this is quite a collectible little item, But Older's never been reissued on vinyl, so I think a lot of people are excited about the vinyl aspect of it. If you think back in '96, this album is nearly an hour long, and they squeezed that onto one vinyl record. And I don't think they cared, because they probably just thought so few people are going to buy it, it doesn't really matter, It was all about the CD and the cassette, I guess, back in the mid-90s. The album was also released on mini disc at the time as well. I nearly picked that up recently on eBay, but was outbid. So yeah, so I guess we wait with anticipation for the new reissue and see what we're going to be offered. But at the moment, it's looking like it may just be a collection of all the tracks from the CD singles and the remixes and radio edits and such like, combined with the original album and Upper as well, which in itself is just a collection of remixes and extra tracks from the singles. That's certainly what it's looking like, but we'll wait and see. As I say, we'll reserve judgment. But I hope you've enjoyed this little overview of Older. If you have, why not subscribe to the SDE YouTube channel for more great physical music unboxed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.